What is the worst mistake you can make in the interview process when you're looking for a new job or internship opportunity? I'm about to tell you. My name's Megan. I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor, and I've been in the workforce for about 20 years in a variety of different jobs. I've also, for about the last 10 years, been on the other side of the interview table. I've had the opportunity to interview hundreds of people, and I can tell you what makes the difference between somebody getting hired and somebody not getting that call back. So, if you want to know what the biggest mistake you can avoid is during your interview process, let's keep going. During the interview process, there are a lot of mistakes and pitfalls that you can fall into, like being late, not dressing appropriately, not having good hygiene. I mean, those are some pretty basic things, and I'll do a whole nother video about all of those. But I wanted to make this video first because I feel like this is the most important thing that you need to know, but it's also the thing that might take you a little longer to prepare for. So I want to make sure that you have all the tools you need to get this job or internship or whatever you're interviewing for this year. So what is the biggest mistake you can make during the interview process? Not being willing to play. That's it, not being willing to play. Now, if you are in a very serious field, such as medicine or engineering or finance, you might be about ready to click off this video, and I totally understand. But I'm making this video for you because I think that people in your field are probably a little more apt to be linear thinkers and literal thinkers, which is extremely important, and we need that in this world, but it makes this part of interviewing a little more difficult. So stick with me and I will explain. Play during the interview process doesn't mean being playful, and it doesn't mean being silly. That is not what you're going for. Being willing to play just really means being willing to engage, being willing to stay fully present, and being able to be a little bit creative. Don't worry if you don't feel like you have a creative bone in your body. It's not a problem. We have some time, I hope. So, what does that look like in a practical sense? In an interview setting, it's kind of like a first date, right? You are just having a conversation back and forth. A lot of times where we get tripped up is that we are so anxious, and especially if it's a job that you really, really want, you're really trying to focus on giving all the right answers and making sure that they know exactly how good your resume is, that they know how good your education is, that they understand the full breadth and width of your experience. And that is all important. Of course it's important. They need to hire the best person for the job. But at the end of the day, they also want to hire somebody that they're going to get along with. If you had to spend 8 hours a day, 5 days a week with someone, wouldn't you want that person to be somebody you get along with? I would. So that's where play comes in. When they are asking you questions, or when they are kind of throwing maybe some curveballs at you, they're trying to get a taste of what your personality is like. And I'm not saying you have to change your personality for the interview. Absolutely not. You definitely don't want to do a bait and switch. But you want to give them the best version of yourself, not the super anxious and quiet and super serious version of yourself, because that's not who they probably want to work with every day. So let me give you an example. I was watching an Instagram video about a doctor who's in his residency program, and he was describing the interview process for the residency program. And what he said is that one of the questions that was asked is, what is your favorite cereal and why? And this guy is very bubbly and fun and engaging and silly a little bit. So he had an answer. He made one up right on the spot. I think he said he liked Trix. I don't know. That's not the point. The point is he had an answer. What he also said is that another person who was in that interview didn't have an answer, and they weren't willing to think of one. They just gave up. They said, I don't know. And while that may be true that he didn't know in that moment, I think what happened to the second guy, who was probably a very qualified, intelligent man, is that he wasn't willing to play. He didn't know how to play. He wasn't prepared to play. And that is what I'm trying to tell you. Your job when you go into an interview is to be prepared to play. Be prepared to be fully present, be prepared to be engaged, and be prepared to be a little creative. I know it sounds scary for some of us, but you can do it. So let's think of another example. When I interviewed for my last position, one of the things that was very important to the team actually was potlucks. And so their kind of out of left field question to me was, if you were hired, what would you bring to our potluck? I did freeze in the moment. I'm going to be honest with you. I did kind of freeze and I was like, oh, I don't know. But I didn't say I don't know. So don't say I don't know. But give yourself a minute. Let your brain process that you are being asked a very strange question that has nothing to do with your qualifications or the job. Let that pass. And then try to let yourself be a little creative and give an answer. Don't say, I don't know, because that could, unfortunately, kind of be the nail in the coffin on that interview. So what I ended up saying was, well, I really don't enjoy cooking, to be honest, but I'm really good at bringing napkins, cups, and drinks to any potluck or barbecue that I attend. And that's true. I really don't like to cook. I don't like to make food for other people. It makes me really self-conscious. So I do usually bring those items to the potluck. But the truth of the matter is I could have said anything. I could have said, grape jelly meatballs, or I could have said cookies because I love dessert, or pie, or whatever. It really doesn't matter what I said. So do not get hung up on that. What matters is that I gave myself a second to kind of click over in my brain to another channel and answer the question, even though it had nothing to do with that job. And I really, actually, in the 3 years I was there, probably only went to like 2 potlucks. So it wasn't actually even that important. But anyway, that is neither here nor there. For you, what I would like for you to do is try and get yourself into a mindset where an interview is fair game. There are no rules. There are no laws. I mean, there are some laws about interviews. There are certain things they can't ask you, but asking out of left field silly questions is not against the law, and it's totally fair game. So what I would recommend to you is be willing to play. There could be any number of strange questions that get thrown at you that have nothing to do with your field. So what I want you to do is, 1, practice interviewing. Practice answering questions in the mirror. Look at yourself, as weird as it is, or look at a friend or your partner or your dog. It really doesn't matter. But practice answering interview questions. You can Google most common interview questions, and you can actually even Google most common interview questions for attorneys, most common interview questions for Target, for whatever the job is, whatever level of work, you can easily Google those things. Print that list out, practice answering them until you feel comfortable. Once you feel comfortable and like you've had enough repetitions of answering those questions, once you get to the real situation, your stress level is going to be so much lower, okay? I mean, you still will probably be a little anxious, especially, again, if it's a job that you really, really want. But if you've practiced out loud, like I'm doing to you right now, to the camera, you are going to have so much more freedom when it comes to actually answering those kinds of questions in an interview. You still may stumble, still may be nervous, but at least you've had practice, and practice is huge. You can't expect to be really good at something if you don't have practice with it. Everything takes reps. Repetition, repetition, repetition. If you just showed up one day at a Major League Baseball stadium and decided that you were going to be the pitcher that day, probably wouldn't go that well. It's the same thing with interviewing. You need to put in the work ahead of time and practice. And I would even encourage you to film yourself, just so you can kind of see what it is that you even look like or what you sound like when you're answering those questions. So number 1, practice. Number 2, practice the out of the ordinary, weird, irrational questions. So I would look up on Google, weird interview questions or strangest interview questions or most off the wall interview questions. Print that out or put it on your phone while you're looking at yourself or your dog, and practice answering those types of questions. Again, your brain is not used to having to answer those kinds of questions. I even have trouble trying to think of those things in a situation, and I've taken improv classes. I'm a creative arts therapist. I have danced for years and I'm used to sort of thinking on my feet, literally and figuratively. And I still struggle. So if you have never had to answer those kind of questions before, you need to practice, right? So I would really recommend that you, like I said, look up those questions and start answering them. As silly as it feels, as absurd as you feel, answer those questions. So then your brain is getting practice doing something that isn't comfortable, okay? So those are some very concrete, practical steps. The third thing and final thing that I will say in regards to play that you can do is practice getting out of your comfort zone in all areas of your life. If you normally go the same route to work every single day, practice taking a different way. Every day this week, maybe take a different way to work. Or if you are a runner or someone who exercises, maybe take a different route or do a different set or go to a different fitness class than you normally would. Just practice doing things that aren't your usual routine. That's gonna help you to be more present and more ready to be on your toes and deal with the unexpected. So I hope that helped. I'm so excited for you. Congratulations on getting an interview, and I hope you get the job. Thank you so much, and I will see you at our next video. Bye.